Hello, welcome back to From Polygamy to Psychic with Esther Graves. I am, of course, Esther Graves. So I wasn't sure what the response was going to be to me telling my story, to all of the things. And so I just want to say thank you so much for everyone's support and everyone's wonderful comments. It's really been overwhelming in a little bit, like in a good way, in a really, really good way. I want to just let you guys know right up the front that my voice is doing something a little weird today. But if I don't record today, I'm going to be leaving everybody hanging for a really long time, and I don't like that anymore. Also, my cats are being little turkeys this morning. Ink is very, very clingy, and Paul is circling me like a shark. So if suddenly there's a cat in my lap again this week, they're just really needy babies. I've been gone at work for the last 4 days. So today's episode, I am titling Growing Up as a Pliglet. Pliglet is what my sisters and I call ourselves jokingly, like we're a little litter of piglets anyway, just a little fun play on words. I'm also wanted to answer questions that people posted on YouTube. I went to Facebook. I went to Instagram to see if there were any other comments there. Genuinely, I want to answer your guys' questions because that's how I kind of remember stuff. Funnily enough, growing up in a cult is going to create some PTSD. And with that comes memory loss. And a lot of my memories are triggered by questions. And so I would love to hear what you guys are curious about myself, about growing up, all of those things. So I'm going to start with, so Rachel on YouTube. Hi, Rachel. Thanks for commenting. Asked if I share or if I fear rejection, retaliation, or family members being upset because I'm sharing my story with the world. So funnily enough, I read that comment and immediately grabbed my phone to let my sisters know, oh, hey, I'm doing this. Because not all of them check social media a lot. One of them is pretty much off social media. And so, oh my God, I wish I could show you what Ink is doing. He's like hanging off the cat perch. Anyway, but I don't fear their rejection. I don't fear them being upset or angry with me. I just wanted them to be prepared because I do have siblings that don't like talking about how we grew up. They are solely focused on the present, on the here and now, on their future, and they don't like going back, and they don't like when people ask them questions. So if you know my siblings, let them bring it up. Like you can say, oh, hey, I watched Esther's podcast or I listened to it. But then pay attention to those social cues and don't push. I respectfully ask you guys, if you know my family, be respectful of them. I'm telling my story. I'm not telling their story. Yes, they are a part of my story, but I am going to do so in as respectful a manner as I possibly can. The family members that would really be upset with me telling my story, I don't care. I don't care. I don't hold their opinions in high enough value. And that has to do with me coming out as a psychic medium, 15 years ago, owning what I do and really leaning into what I do. I had to break my give a damn. There were a lot of very judgmental people who, I suspected that they would be judgmental. I suspected that there would be this, lack of understanding, judgment, all of that because we live in a culture here in Utah that oftentimes sees psychics and mediums and tarot readers and intuitives and all of that as something very negative, as evil, as of the devil, and all of that. And so I knew that there was going to be rejection then, and it really scared me. And then it happened, and then I'm like, oh, this isn't as bad as it's always worse in our head. Every situation is always way worse in our mind, in our imagination, than it ever is in reality. And I remember one situation in particular. This was, quite a few years ago. My daughter was very, very little, and I don't remember if it was, I don't like hosting parties, and so there's not a lot to choose from. But I remember I was hosting something here at my house, and family came and was in attendance, and one of my sisters-in-law brought her nieces, and from her side of the family, and one of my older brothers was also there. And the nieces asked to see my tarot cards, or, the oracle cards, or like my divination tools that I was using. And I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, let me go grab them. Went upstairs, came back downstairs, and I'm showing them to them and talking to them about them and showing them how they work and such. And a little bit later, my older brother was like, hey, you really want to be careful about, bringing that stuff out. He was more worried that the two girls would judge me and would be upset that I was showing them this thing. Like, he was genuinely trying to protect me. But there was also the judgment, because he is very LDS. Or at least, I don't know if he's very LDS. I know that he is part of the LDS church. I know that his wife is very faithful to the church. And so he had good intentions. And I don't think he would outright reject me. And I know that I have family members that are full on 100% in support. Like, my dad's brother was one of the people who commented, and I was like, oh my God. It's a little bit of my dad saying, like, good job, we're proud of you, like, I'm proud of you, keep doing what you're doing, like, da da da. So for my uncle to put forth. So not, I would say, to answer Rachel's question in a very long roundabout way, I don't fear it anymore. Because my give a damn's busted, and it broke a really long time ago. And I do think that to be who and what you are here to be, you can see his shadow. He's washing himself. Sorry. You have to give a damn. Like, you have to break your give a damn. You cannot care what other people are going to think about you. And I love the quote that you can be the juiciest, ripest, most delicious peach, and there are still going to be people who don't like peaches. So I am a juicy peach. You can like me or not, leave me, take me, whatever. Oh, there he is. He's going to get settled in the sunshine on the chair. It's really fun because he just completely disappears into that chair, and I love it. So, and that's also why I chose a black covering for the chair, is because he just can't tell the first there. So hopefully that answers your question. And then my dear, sweet Lola also commented, and she had more. I'm going to pull this up over here. She says, leave us hanging. I have so many questions. Where were you when your grandma passed in Havasu, like at the moment? And were you alone taking care of her? What? This is crazy. Are you even 18 yet? I love her train of thought. I love how, like, I love it. She just makes me so happy. We need more details. And then also, what was it? So I'm going to do the first part of the question to go into more detail. And it was very cathartic for me to see this question and to actually go back and think about that time. So what she's referencing is when my mother's mother was sick with cancer. And so we found out end of February, beginning of March, I want to say. I wasn't there a super long time, but I drove down to Havasu, Arizona, and stayed with her and took care of the house. My grandmother had this beautiful garden, which seems like an oxymoron in the desert to have this beautiful garden on her house. But she had all of these lovely desert plants and there were some other plants that, did well in heat, but needed to be watered and cared for. And so I took it on as my task to care for this garden, to care for the house. My grandmother was a very, very neat and orderly woman. She vacuumed daily. And so she showed me what to do, and I did all the work that I could for her. I went grocery shopping. I went to the bank for her. And she unfortunately was in a lot of pain and was very uncomfortable. And so she spent a lot of her time in bed. So I went with her to one of the doctor appointments with the oncologist, and I still remember this man as just being like, he has to be a little bit jaded, working, in oncology in a community that is a lot of retirees. Like, there's a lot of people who, like my grandparents were from another state and they went to Arizona to live in the heat and not have to worry about snow and all of that. And so I do think you have to be a little jaded and a little bit guarded. And so I understand where he was coming from, but he was kind of a dick. And so he's talking to my grandmother about her options. And at this point, her cancer was pretty advanced. And so he told her, hey, we can do chemo. We can do the treatments that we normally do for this. It's probably not going to do much, though. It might give you a little bit more time, but it also might kill you. And so she weighed her options and she decided that she did, in fact, want to try chemo. And my grandmother had this wonderful friend, and I believe her name was Jackie. I could be wrong. I'm terrible with names. And this woman was just an angel. My grandmother was this very tiny, petite woman. She was maybe 130 pounds, and she was like 4'9". I remember being taller. I was taller than her, and I'm 5'1". I'm like significantly taller than her. Her shoes, she was a size 5, just the tiniest little feet. And Jackie was this tall, statuesque, probably also about 130 pounds, but like 5'7", 5'8", just beautiful older woman. And she had this gorgeous long gray hair. And she was also visiting frequently, but was also, helping take care of my grandmother, take care of different things. And when it came time for my grandmother's first round of chemo, well, her only round of chemo that she ended up receiving, Jackie drove us because I didn't know the hospital. I didn't know the area very well. So Jackie drove us. So we dropped my grandmother off. And this was, 2006. And I don't know if we could have stayed and kept her company, or if she's like, no, don't worry about it, just go. But we ended up leaving, and Jackie needed a new dining room table. And I do remember, it's so weird that I remember all of these details, but I'm struggling to remember this wonderful woman's name. Anyway, she needed a dining room table. And so we went to Ashley Furniture, and we spent like 2 hours at an Ashley Furniture, wandering around looking at all of the different styles that they had available. And then we went and we picked my grandmother up and took her home, got her some food, and she went to bed. And I don't remember if it was the next day or the following day. Like, when they discharged her to me. And I am 19. I'm about to turn 20, but I'm 19. I'm still a teenager, to answer your other question, Lola. So yes, I am an adult at this point, but I'm a baby adult. So they had given me a list of things to look out for, as a potential negative reaction to the chemo, and to call 911, get her to the hospital as soon as possible if I saw any of these things happen. And it was morning, I believe, early, like mid-morning. She was having a reaction, and to respect her. I'm not going to share details of what the reaction was, just her dignity. I'm going to protect her dignity. There's the word. Anyway, she was having this reaction. So I called 911. And like, not that long before this happened, I had watched something, seen something that was talking about how when you call 911, a lot of times you forget the address and like they need to know where you are so they can get to you. And so I went into the kitchen and I grabbed a piece of mail that had my grandma's address on it. And so when they asked, what's I was calling from my cell phone. And so I let them know, like, this is the number in case this gets disconnected. This is the address. This is what's going on. She had chemo. She's having this reaction, blah, 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 blah. And so the paramedics came and got her, and I called the paramedics, and then I called Jackie. And I still remember going in to her bedroom and being like, hey, Grandma, because she was begging me to call 911. And so that's like, she's like, call 911, please call 911, please, I need help. And I'm like, okay. So I went and called. And then I went in and I told her, I said, hey, Grandma, I called 911. And she's like, you did? You really did? And I remember, her voice in that moment, like she was shocked that I had actually done what she had asked. I don't know why she seemed shocked, but she did. So I called Jackie to let her know, and she's like, okay, you stay at the house. I'll go and meet him at the hospital, and I'll keep you posted on all the things. And I said, okay. So so I then call my mom. I call all the people that I need to call. I'm, doing the communicating. And later that evening, Jackie, I don't remember if Jackie came to the house or if she called and she said, hey, they're going to keep her overnight. I'll come over in the morning and get you, and we'll go to the hospital together. Because again, I'm still, like, I know the town-ish, but I'm not super familiar with all of the things. And Jackie was just an absolute angel. So the next morning, it was like 9 a.m. I woke up, was getting ready, had just had breakfast. I hear a knock at the door, and I'm like, oh, it's Jackie. She's here to get me. So Jackie comes inside, and she's like, hey, honey, so your grandma passed during the night. Like she let go, and I lost it. I cried. I was very emotional. And this strong, beautiful woman had also lost her best friend. And she put that aside. She put it aside to hold space for me. So after that, I was calling, my mother, my now husband, my boyfriend at the time, who, everyone then traveled down from Utah. My aunt traveled from Wisconsin. My other aunt traveled all the way from Australia. And it was a tragic and fun week after that of going through my grandmother's possessions, doing the estate sale, handling all of that. It was a whirlwind week, but Lola asked this question, and so I went back in my mind to remember this, and I realized that when I'm working as a medium, when I'm connecting to people's loved ones on the other side, a lot of times there is a lot of heavy grief. There's a lot of really, really big emotions, and I can't take that from those people. I can't feel that emotion from those people. I can hold space for them. I can hold their hand. I can hug them as they work through this and support them and let them know that they're not alone. I can't do that for them. And I realized that when I am doing that for these people, I'm channeling Jackie. Maybe not channeling her, but I am, that's the image the energy that I am pulling from myself to be for them. And I didn't realize that until I saw this question and went back in time in my mind to see this story and to tell this story. So thank you, Lola, for asking that question in particular. So shortly after that, we went back home, and I think it was in 2018. I was driving out to Tooele, Utah, which is on the west side of the Salt Lake Valley. Like, it's over the Oka Mountains. So it's like a 45-minute drive from where I live. And I was driving out there to do my very first group reading. So it was for a family. This woman had booked me. And at the time, I had a very specific music playlist that I would play to help kind of get me into the groove and then the mindset of connecting. And so I'm listening to this playlist and I'm kind of calling in, energy and all that stuff to help me. And I'm like, okay, I know that there's going to be a lot of people's energy. There's going to be like living people and deceased people. Like, how am I going to do this? Da, da, da. And then suddenly my grandma is sitting in the seat next to me in the passenger seat. And I remember, like, she had this clipboard in her hand. Like, you can't see my hands, so I don't know why I'm holding something. But she's got this clipboard. And I'm like, Grandma, what are you doing here? Like, never in a million years would have thought that my grandma would come and help me with, mediumship, communicating with the dead, blah, 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 like all that stuff. It was a very alien thought to me that she would come and help. And she's like, I'm here to help organize the people. And then she's showing me memories of the things that she would do. She was very involved in politics and helping organize different things. And she was a people manager. And so, like, when people were doing debates or speeches or things like that, she was the person who held the clipboard and told people, okay, here's your, it's your turn to go up. Okay, you need to wrap up. So she was in charge of doing that when she was alive. And she was coming to help me do what I do on the other side. So she was there to manage and organize the dead people and to help me sift through and manage the energy of the living people as well. And so anytime I do any group event, any big event, like a gallery reading. So I do gallery readings once a month with Jennifer Martin at the Conjuring Tree in West Jordan. Our next one is May 31st at 6 p.m. It's $44 a ticket if you're interested. And so sometimes we will have up to 15 people at these gallery readings, and I will still feel my grandmother. I'll feel her, sitting on my left, organizing the deceased people. And when I feel her retreat, that's when I know, okay, we're done with people. The energy's done. And it's just, she's such a comfort to me, and I'm so appreciative of her and of Jackie. So yeah, that's the story of my grandmother passing in more detail. So her next question, what was going on with the bigger group as you dropped further and further away? Like at 12, was there a connection or pressure from others to keep going to meetings? No, I didn't have, and if there was, I wasn't listening. I was in a very rebellious phase. My mother multiple times has told me that from the ages of 13 to 16, she could have smothered me in my sleep and felt no remorse. Do you understand why I am the way that I am hearing these things? Yeah, no, I didn't have pressure. And if there was pressure, I ignored it. I didn't think about it. It wasn't on my radar. So then this is where the rest of her questions were growing up as a pliglet. Like, what was that like? The homeschool. So my mom both homeschooled me in our home for part of things, as well as taking me to the private church or the private school at the church. There we go. I have weird memories of being at the school at the church. I remember being very, like, not even being able to walk. And like I remember being placed on my belly in the baby room. So yeah, I remember being placed on my belly on the floor and like looking up at all of the bright colors. And like, I don't remember sounds. I don't remember voices or anything like that, but I remember the colors and watching people's feet and legs and the dresses. In the group, women almost always wore dresses. It was an extremely rare thing. If you were at the building to see a woman in pants, it was usually a work project. It was you were getting dirty kind of a deal if someone was wearing pants. We would wear pants at home. We would wear jeans, we're working on the property, but yeah, it was usually dresses. I was still the weird kid, even in the school of weird kids at the Plig Church. I was the weird kid. And so I remember kind of being an outside looking in all the time. Like I always felt like I was on the periphery of everything, that I was very much an observer rather than a full on participant a lot of times. And occasionally like I would play and I would, be in part of all of the things, but I've always felt very much on the outside of things as a kid. I'm not a great, as a kid, I was not a great self-motivator. The dogs have big opinions about things going on in the neighborhood. Someone's probably walking their dog past my house. So our neighborhood was half polygamists, half not polygamists. And so there was this, Jemima. Gemma! There was this weird divide between the neighborhood kids. Like we would all play together. We would all, I have a lot of happy memories playing with the neighborhood kids. We would do night games at the Thompsons. We would, there was a man, Marv Jensen, was a pretty famous boxing trainer in the, I think, 50s, 60s. I can't, maybe 80s as well. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how long his career ran for him. But he lived at the north end of our property, and he had a huge chunk of land. And a lot of it was this big field surrounded by these beautiful tall trees. And we would go and play, all these different games in his yard. He would, if you went to his house, he would give you a soda and a butterscotch candy. And we weren't allowed to have soda. So that was like a treat. And when I was really, really young, he would let us play in the boxing ring. Like he had a boxing ring building, like this whole building built around this boxing ring where he would train people. And he would let us go in there and play, and like we'd bounce off the ropes and all of that stuff. And one of my sisters punched one of the neighborhood boys so hard his nose bled, and then we weren't allowed to play in there anymore. It's like I have a lot of these really, really beautiful, fun memories, but I also have memories of like playing with kids. We had apartment complexes across the street from us that they were fourplexes. So there was 2 buildings and there was 4 apartments in each building, and it was one level. And so people would move in and like I would make friends with their kids and we would play and we'd have a good time. And then, the next day or a couple days later, these kids would be like, "Oh, my mom told me I can't be friends with you anymore because your family's polygamists or you're. So there's that rejection from not half the neighborhood, part of the neighborhood, which is a big part of my people pleasing tendencies was I want to be liked. I want to be included in things. I want to be a part of things. Her next question, did you have a fear of being taken from your home or your parents? Yes. And that was another thing is you have this fear that is underneath every other experience and emotion. So I could not. So in the home, I called my second mother, I called her Mama Carol. Unless I was around my biological mother, and then she was Aunt Carol, or we were out and about in the wild. A lot of times we would tell people that she was our dad's sister, that she was our aunt. So she was our Aunt Carol. Because if people found out, we would be taken away from our parents. Our dad would go to jail. Our mothers might go to jail. Yeah, it was very, you don't talk about it. You don't talk about the church. So like me doing this, me talking about it which is part of why I don't hide what I come from, because I to this day, I hate secrets. I love me a good surprise. I love me a good surprise. I don't like secrets. Do not tell me anything you would not want people knowing about. I'm going to tell you that right now. I will not say anything about somebody that I would not also say to their face. If you have a secret and you don't want that secret out, okay. When it comes to professional clients and things like that, I have this wonderful system built into my brain called reader's amnesia. I forget your shit. So I can't really tell anybody if I don't remember what it is. So you don't got to worry about that. If you're sitting down with me for a reading and you're like, oh no, I told her these things, I don't remember. It's fine. You're fine. Anyway, but for anybody else, if I don't keep secrets, secrets are bad. Secrets mean someone is getting hurt or has the potential to be hurt by actions and choices around the secrets. I won't keep them. I'm crazy about being hydrated, which is why you will hear the tink tink of my spoon periodically, because I have my tea. My father spent a good chunk of his youth with his family hiding in Mexico because his dad had been arrested. I think Grandpa was arrested a couple of times for bigamy. And so, yeah, that was an everyday fear. Yeah. So I think that answers those questions. So if you have more questions from me talking about these things, please let me know. I would love to answer them. I wrote down questions and things like that. So, growing up, we had an acre. My childhood, we had an acre and a half of property. My father started out with a lot more than that, and over the years had to sell off chunks of the property. Like he owned the property that the Thompsons' home was built on, and that's where the barn was, the original barn that was our property. And so when he sold the property, he sold the barn to them. That was on their chunk of land after that. And so we built a different barn, and I remember building it, and we built it out of cinder blocks and concrete, and it was this gray little building. But the way our property was laid out, it was in thirds. So the first third of the acre and a half was house and yard. And we had 4 blue spruces. So there's 4 blue spruces in the front yard that kind of created some privacy from the road. There was no sidewalks. It was pavement. I think it was a dirt road for a really, really long time, and they finally paved it. And then, so we had the blue spruces, and then we had the fence to keep the dogs in. We always had dogs, always, my whole life. I don't remember a time ever that there wasn't dogs. We had cats on the property, and they were usually indoor, outdoor cats. My mother had a cat. It was a gray, Russian blue gray, named Laura. That was her pride and joy. That should have tipped us off to some things, that she had more favoritism towards this cat than us. So the front door faced east. Our house faced east. And the front door, when you walked in, my dad had rearranged the layout of this house multiple times. Like, he would just knock walls down and rebuild it and da-da-da. So my childhood, what I remember is you would walk in the front door, and immediately there's the banister for the staircase that took you down to the basement. Nobody ever used the front door. Like, if someone went to our front door, we knew that they didn't know us, because we never used the front door. We always used the kitchen door, which was on the south side of the house. And it went onto the gravel driveway that we had. And when you went in the kitchen door, you went immediately into the kitchen. If you went in the front door, so you'd be facing the stairway. If you went to the right, there was the family room, the front room, where our couch and our TV and all of that. If you went to the left, there was a dining room table right there. And then beyond that was the kitchen. That kitchen was beat to hell most of my childhood. But that is where my Mama Carol taught me, because I was home with her a lot of the time when I was really, really little. When we moved because we did spend a couple of years, or at least a year, in the Georgia Drive house, was what we called it, when Carol and my mother weren't getting along. But when I was home with Carol, when she was taking care of me, I remember her teaching me how to knead bread, to can, to cook, like all of these early memories. And so when I am in my kitchen, I can feel her super, super close. We had an island in the middle of the kitchen, and she would get a chair, and I would stand on this chair next to her at the island as she was doing all of these things. And I was her little helper. So we also had a legit bunker, bomb shelter, underneath the basketball court. You had the driveway, and then after the driveway, if you were heading west into the property, there was this basketball course, and we played basketball all the time. All of us. That was another thing that we did as with the neighbor kids, is we played basketball. We also played softball, baseball, whatever version of it you want to call it, in the back pasture, and cow patties were our bases. Tell me you're redneck without telling me you're redneck, was the joke in our house growing up. So you'd have the driveway, then you'd have the basketball court, and then there was just kind of this empty space that kind of ended up being a dump ground for like my dad's boat and the wheelbarrow that eventually died. And like, it was just natural, native grasses, all of that. And then behind the property, like the grass area that was yard and things like that for us kids to play in, and then for the dogs and such, was the orchard. We had, I think, 4 different fruit trees. We had a couple of apple trees, some apricot, and I think a plum. and we would harvest and can. Rhett's being a turd today. Beyond, and just behind the orchard was the garden. And it was one of our chores before we could go and play and do things after school that we would have to weed a row. Which is why you will never see me digging in the ground unless it's an absolute life or death situation. I don't like dirt. I don't like being dirty. No, thank you. And next to the garden, and so we grew like corn, cucumbers, carrots, potatoes, tomatoes, beans, like a lot of different things. But next to the garden was also the chicken coop, which they are the reason that I feel absolutely no remorse going to KFC, because chickens are evil. I don't like them. We had a rooster who was extremely aggressive and mean and pecked me from head to toe. Yeah, not a fan of chickens. So you will not ever see me homesteading. Just saying. Nope, not going to be me. Then there was the new barn, and along the edge of the new barn, in the end, was pasture, and that is where we had cows for a minute. A lot of goats. We got goats. Specifically, that was what they used to feed me when my mother had to go back to work. I was fed because formula back in the 80s was very, very expensive. And so they got goats to supplement me when my mother couldn't breastfeed and she couldn't pump and all that stuff. So, yeah. Also not a big fan of goats. They're assholes. I have sisters who absolutely adore them. I have one sister who she dreams of having goats. Like those were her babies. I have memories of being with Mama Carol in the barn as these goats are having babies. And it was just wild to me that 4 babies would be inside one mom, and just the wildest stuff. And I remember we would have to take our girl goats to these people's, I don't even remember who these people were. I knew they were part of the group. And I think they lived out in BFE Harriman, which is not BFE anymore. Harriman's pretty built up, but at the time it was mostly fields and, the spare house here and there. But these people had billy goats. And if you know anything about goats, you know that they stink. They are smelly. And so that's why we did not ever keep the boy goats. And I do have one slightly traumatic memory of when this really nice man came to help us with the baby boy goats when they were getting older. They were bigger. They were probably like 6 months old or something. And my Mama Carol, one of my neighbor friends was over playing with me, and she told me and my friend to stay in the house and to not look out any of the windows. You tell a kid not to look out the window, they're going to try and look out the window. And I remember I was so little that Charity was like holding my legs, and like I was like, the window wasn't that high. I was just tiny. And I'm like, my fingers were grabbing the edge of this window, trying to look up and over. And I got a brief glimpse of all 4 of these little boys, being hung by their neck. Sorry, trigger. I should have given a trigger warning. That was, and then I was very confused because then they were gone, and our freezer in the basement was full of meat, and we had a lot of meat for a really long time. And I didn't, like, I was little. I did not understand. Now I'm going, oh, that's why she didn't want me looking out the windows. Okay. Gotcha. But I remember that guy was super, super nice. Oh, sorry. I just had a memory pop up of the fruit guy, the fruit man. I don't remember ever calling him anything else. But this man was wrinkled, grizzled, super nice, so sweet. But he would show up to our house with his tiny little pickup truck, and the bed would be full of whatever kind of fruit he happened to have. I don't know where he got it, where it came from. It could have fallen off of someone else's truck. I don't know. But the fruit man would come and stop at our house, and one of the adults would go and buy big old boxes of fruit from him that we would keep down in the cellar and in the basement. So I also want to differentiate. We had a cellar, which was a cold storage underground where we would keep the potatoes, the fruit, the stuff that needed to be cold, but not frozen or in a fridge. And then we had the bunker that was different. That was like prepped with food and supplies and all that stuff because nuclear war was imminent, right? That's what they thought back then. Yeah, the fruit man would show up, and he had to have lived till he was close to 100, if not beyond, because he was, super nice guy. So, and it was very community focused. Like I remember that. So oftentimes people ask, what was it like growing up as, a child in the polygamous community? I'll be like, it was great. There honestly were probably more positives than negatives. I had an adult almost all of the time if I needed one. Mama Carol was there almost 24/7 to take care of me or to be there for me. My mother would be there after she got off work and on the weekends. My dad worked swing shift. And so he would wake up around 3:00 in the afternoon, and he wouldn't come home until, I think after midnight. I'm not entirely sure when he would come home. But then I also had a house full of siblings. Like at my childhood, I constantly remember people always being in our home. And I remember constantly looking for a place to be where there were not people, because there were always people. And I wanted to just have some time and space away from the people. And I was tiny. I was a very small child. And so I would climb into crazy places to hide. My dad got these chairs from, I think it was a hotel that closed down, and he got them super cheap. But they were this like burnt orange, of this 60s and 70s kind of color common. And they were square. Everything about them was square. But they had a gap that was probably 6 to 8 inches underneath them. And I could perfectly curl up into a ball and like prop my legs on one side of the chair. And they were pretty wide chairs. Like they weren't small chairs. They were decent sized. But like I would sneak under them and curl up into a ball and fall asleep. And I remember one time like kind of waking up, and my older brother was like, "Yep, she's under the chair again." Like announcing to everybody, because nobody had seen me in a while. We had one really, really big apple tree in the backyard that I would climb all of the time to get up, and it had, and that's another thing I remember about my childhood, is we had the best sunrises and the best sunsets. They were so beautiful, especially from that apple tree. I would climb up the apple tree and watch the sunset from the apple tree. But our house was always so busy, and it wasn't just like that there were a lot of kids. It was Mama Carol had her kids who were constantly coming to visit with their kids. One of her daughters has 10 children. 10. And a lot of them were my age. And so they would come and we would play and hang out and have a lot of fun. And so and sometimes their kids would be staying with us. Like at any given time, there's usually about 12 people living in my home. me included. Like I was included in that 12. So the house was always busy, and it was mostly good. They did authoritarian punishment. I was spanked. We had a paddle that hung on the wall. And we would be spanked for whatever missteps. And I remember that fear of my father because I had done something wrong, and my mother would be like, oh, just wait until your father gets home and I tell him about this. I am technically a millennial, but I relate a lot with the Gen X lifestyle of what they experienced. Because I was raised very, very similarly in very much the same way. We had a dinner bell because we would go and roam the neighborhood. And my mother would ring, Mama Carol or my mother would ring the dinner bell to call us all back in. And then we would have dinner, and then we could go back out. And as soon as it got dark, we would have to, that was the rule, right? We didn't watch a lot of TV or movies and things like that. My dad was a big nerd. And so like Star Wars was a big thing. Star Trek was a big thing in our house. And musicals. Oh, musicals. And that is another thing that I remember vividly. And still, my sisters and I will just break into song. And it's something that brings me so much joy, specifically, is singing with them. My sister, my oldest sister, is... She's got to have some sort of synesthesia, but she legit could have been a child prodigy if they had pursued it, because she can hear a song once and sit down at the piano and just there it is. Just, she's amazing. And so she would play, or my mother would play on the piano, and we would all sing, and they would make fun of me because I am a soprano and I will take it to a note that it probably shouldn't be at. And they call it my mouse voice, or my squeaky mouse voice. Yeah. So like it was a lot of community. It was a lot of good memories. It was a lot of all of that. But underneath all of that was that fear of rejection, fear of everything being ripped out from underneath you. Fear of survival. We were not rich. Like my dad had a good job. He worked for J.C. Penney in their technology department, and he took me to work with him one time, and he showed me the room. And the computers were as big as cars. This was in the 90s that he would have taken me with him. And his job, his responsibility was to take care of these computers, to manage them, to run reports, and like, you remember the paper that was like, had the holes on either side, and it was all kind of stuck together, and it was perforated, and so you could pull a page out, but then it would like print and fold perfectly. He would bring reams of that kind of paper home, that for whatever reason they couldn't use it. Anyway, and I just remember these computers printing out information onto these sheets and sheets and sheets and sheets of paper. I remember falling asleep under his desk. I liked me a good nap when I was a kid. But yeah, so, I mean, he had a good job, but he didn't make a ton of money. It was enough to take it by, I think. He also didn't make some great financial choices with things. And so I still have a hard time shopping at thrift stores because that was all we could do. Almost all of my clothes were hand-me-downs or thrifted. there was a store in the valley that sold like dented food cheaper. And so we would go and buy a bunch of dented canned food that was still technically good, but it was cheaper. So there was a lot more. I do believe, 100% believe, that my childhood had more good in it and more good, happy memories than negative. Clothing wise, this shirt would not be acceptable because it was down to the wrist, up to the neck, down to the ankles. Every bit of you is covered as much as possible. And so with that also comes body shame, and especially for women, because we were taught that it was our fault if we tempted a man, if we gave him bad thoughts and and we had to modify our behavior. So I'm not saying it was all sunshine and roses and it was, perfect and all of that, because it wasn't. It was still a very high controlled religion, and the fear of, well, if you don't live your life according to these standards, you're going to burn in hell. So, but I am forever and for always very grateful for my sisters. Because yes, they terrorized me. Yes, they were typical sisters who would pin me down on the ground and tap my forehead and tell me to list 10 candy bars as fast as I could. One of my sisters would lean over the banister and spit on people as they ran up and down the stairs. And I still have that intrusive thought pop into my head if I'm like leaning over a staircase or a balcony or something. I'd be like, Esther, do not spit on people. Because yes, she talked me into doing it with her a couple of times. I was a very gullible child. They also convinced me that there was a Loch Ness type monster in the Jordanelle Reservoir that was man-made in the 80s. But I was convinced there was this ancient monster. Yeah, I believed that for a little too long. So yes, they terrorized me, but they also made it a really beautiful and fun experience, and I am very appreciative of them. I think I'm going to end it there. Again, if you have questions, if you would like me to go into more detail about other aspects, I am more than happy to. I am going to try to find a way to overlay an image on the YouTube of the house floor plan and the property and things like that. So that you guys can have a little better visual. And if I'm able to do that, I will also post that on social media. So again, thank you for joining me today and listening to my story and helping me process and hopefully getting another person's story out there that can connect with someone so that they don't feel as alone. And again, be nice to the weird kid. I was the weird kid. And I am very appreciative of those who were very kind to me. So next week, I've already pre-recorded and it's going to go out. So any questions that you have from this episode won't come out next week. They'll come out the following week. So next week, I'm really excited. I already recorded it and I'm bumping it so that I can tell you guys these stories. Will be more about the spooky stuff that I experienced as a child and as a teen and as a young adult, and all of those things that got me started down the path to embracing my psychic abilities. So I'm excited for you guys to hear that. So take care, make good choices, and I will talk to you guys next week.